Look, I don't have 500 hours. I've not finished the game to 100% completion. I've just played it for about 100 hours, and I've had a blast so far. A controversial opinion, I know. How can someone possibly enjoy a game that is embarrassing and genuinely terrible, or something that is a deserved punishment for the evil corporation of Todd Howard? Let's get one thing straight. This game is far from perfect. There are a fair few things that are wrong with this game, as there are with a lot of games, and there are some things that are admittedly flat out unacceptable in a modern day release. But in an overall sense, this is one of the most quintessentially Bethesda games I've played in a really long time. To be perfectly honest, I first played this game when it was right available on Game Pass. As a fan of Fallout 4, another controversial opinion I know, I figured if what Bethesda was selling was just a Fallout game but in space, it would be a perfectly good way of passing the time. And since it was on Game Pass, I didn't have to spend any more money than I wasn't already spending. And I quit the game in about maybe 5 hours. I essentially made my way to New Atlantis and figured it was the end of the tutorial, so I should really let loose and let Bethesda do what they do best and give me a ton of side content and a world to get immersed in. But I ran into problems with the spongy enemies, the horrible ship combat, and the, at the time, non-existent local map, which made exploration so inconvenient, especially in the cities. And what seems to be pretty boring side quests and a pretty mediocre main quest. So before I did too much exploring or got too deep into the game, I just quit. You have to understand I had zero investment into this game. I'm not a fan of sci-fi or space-themed games. I didn't even pay any money to play it. I don't have any love for the IP, obviously, because it's a brand new release. I just figured this game isn't for me and I should just move on. And of course, I do end up seeing all the reviews for the game, and apparently a lot of people hated it. And these are the people who had apparently spent hundreds of hours on the game. So I felt validated with my decision and just moved on. Fast forward to about a month ago, I came across a review about Starfield from a YouTuber whose opinion I respect quite a bit, which really opened my eyes as to what this game could actually be. It showcased the game in a very different light from what I experienced in my initial little bit, so I was motivated to give it another try. So I reinstalled the game. I had a very particular build in mind that I wanted to try out, something that I also found on YouTube. So my plan was to complete the build, and while doing that I would just push through the main story and at the very least see that through. A bit into the main story I realized I need a lot more money to make my build work. So I decided I'll go back and do the boring side quests for credits. And it turns out I was being a bit premature when I wrote off the game's side content. I'm not gonna sit here and give you any review jargon. I'll just tell you the story of how my save file progressed, and hopefully that paints this game in a new light for you. The main story took me to a little mining outpost on Mars called Sidonia, where I found work from a mining supervisor who needed me to do an investigation on some missing supplies, and that quest turned out to be way more interesting than I thought it would be. It had me sign up for the job, work as a secretary, charm some bartenders, go to space and recover a shipment which was mired in controversy, and basically everything but mining or any other form of low quality fetch quest activities. The whole quest had two pretty interesting moral dilemmas related to the packages as well as relating to the missing supplies and who took it and what to do with him at the end. And overall the writing was quite good. After the quest wrapped up, I talked to another miner to make some more money who asked me to act as a sort of peacemaker between her and her father. That took me to the city of Neon, and almost immediately my whole view of the game changed. From what I've been told, the world is boring, uninteresting, and uninspired. And here I was in a city that was anything but. It was rich in detail, had a lot of lore to unravel, loads of interesting locations, and tons of side content, almost overwhelmingly so. Anyways, I was still on the hunt for some credits, so of course when I was immediately greeted with a job opportunity, I took it. This being a cyberpunk city, there was a corporate job right in the gates. I filled out a form, told them I had decades of experience, knew everything about the company, had a PhD, and had never committed a single crime in my life. All lies, but hey, you gotta do what you gotta do. A quick interview later, I was a new employee at Ryujin Industries. This company, with its many similarities from Arasaka from Cyberpunk 2077, I don't know if they actually took inspiration from Arasaka, but it's hard to really deny it. Anyways, the company had me quickly doing a lot of shady stuff. I became a junior operative and traveled the galaxy committing corporate espionage, playing office politics, attending board meetings, and the occasional assassination. As a result, There are large parts of this questline that had you take a stealth approach to your missions, which was very well done in my opinion, because unlike games like Skyrim and Fallout 4, there's a built-in ledge climbing system as well as jetpacks, and as a result there was some pretty sick verticality that was integrated within the maps and the levels, and we've not really seen this in Bethesda games before. There was also some really compelling writing. Unlike other Bethesda games, you don't immediately become the leader after doing one thing for the faction. While this faction does have you do a lot, you're still a junior operative for the whole questline, and only getting a promotion to senior operative once you complete the whole questline. Where in previous Bethesda titles, you'd probably become the CEO of the company after picking a couple locks. It once again had a really interesting moral dilemma, with the use of Neurolamp and being able to mind control people. There was a huge part of the fate of the company and who should be the CEO. You as the player had a strong influence over this decision, but you were not the only one who could decide the outcome, which made this decision feel a lot more real. It felt like everything I'd done in this questline had consequences, and ultimately it guided me into making decisions about who I should be loyal to. In some sense, and brace yourself because this is a very controversial opinion that will probably upset a lot of people, but in some sense, this questline reminded me a lot of Fallout New Vegas. And throughout the quest, I'd gone to other star systems, explored other cities, but I would almost immediately come back to Neon to keep doing more quests here, which there are a lot of, and they are all very interesting. From helping shopkeepers fighting criminals, to manufacturing and selling crack like a criminal, helping DJs and helping other corporations. I spent so much time here that I sometimes felt like the whole game was just based in Neon. But of course, there is quite literally a whole galaxy out there for me to explore. Honestly, if you play Bethesda games just for the compelling world building and the exploration and the questing, hand on my heart, I think this game does it the best. After Neon, I immediately went off to all the other different major cities to complete more of the side content, align myself with more of the factions such as the Freestar Rangers or the Crimson Fleet, and honestly I've had a blast so far. The questing system in this game is just so unbelievably fun, and I was hooked. This game is a slow burn. All the things that I initially saw as boring, such as the questing, just got better the more I played the game. Even the ship combat, which I vowed I would do as little as possible at the start of my playthrough, became so much more fun the more I progressed, with the different ships I unlocked, the different perks, the larger scale combat situations, and more. The general combat evolved in a similar way. It got more fun as I got more perks, more powers, more guns. I invested more into the crafting and more into my gear and legendary weapons and so on. Now of course there are a bunch of flaws with this game. Bethesda titles were never known for being the most polished or having the best gameplay, and 10-15 years ago when Fallout and Skyrim were coming out, we would just mod this game and think nothing of it. But in 2024, having a UI that's just a straight up downgrade from Fallout 4 that came out 10 years ago is a bit silly. Every single time a new Bethesda game comes out, the most endorsed mod on the Nexus is a UI mod. So it's just a bit weird that Bethesda still hasn't figured this out. And seriously, this bartering and inventory menu is just a joke. And let's not forget, this game didn't have a proper local map for the longest time, making exploration significantly more inconvenient. And of course, the main story is still pretty bland, which again is not off-brand for Bethesda if we're being totally honest. I can't really remember the last main story from a Bethesda title, New Vegas doesn't count obviously, that I really enjoyed, and this isn't an exception. And honestly, Bethesda really needs to work on that, because how many times can they just release a main story that's this boring and then call it as a AAA game? But once again, it's a Bethesda title. We expect this, and at the end of the day, we're gonna mod the game to our liking anyways. So all these gameplay flaws is really not that big a deal. But Bethesda really needs to step their game up with this sort of thing. Putting all that aside, I can't remember the last time I was this invested into a completely new game world, or had this much fun exploring and just wandering on the map completely aimlessly. And honestly, if you wrote off Starfield when it came out, you really ought to give it a second chance.